I'm Gia Ariati, and I have been guided to record this personal transmission as a beginning stages to the documentation of the remembrance journey. Now that the tipping point has occurred for the collective human race and the karmic imprint that has been held within my vessel that was holding the distortions of history has been cleared, I can access a clear point of purified sharings, ancient wisdom, knowledge, and information in relation to the creation of the human race and my involvement in this directive. It is not only an acknowledgement of what has been and the ownership for my part within the greater whole, but the focus and the intention of these sharings and these channeled transmissions, which are personally healing me at the exact same time that you are receiving them and activating my remembrance into deeper reconciliation so that I can bring through the wisdom and information that is required for the human race, is a journey of letting go of mind and allowing source to guide. And the reason for this is that the information that I hold is limited to being received without direct connection to the remembrance and the location of where this information is held within the libraries of this galaxy, the libraries of creation, the different access points that store information that has been recorded, suppressed, and manipulated to continue the entrapment on this planet, this human race. And I do not desire to partake in any continuation of slavery for humanity. I no longer desire to lead from a place of patriarchy, control, manipulation, and that any aspects of self that has played into roles that were out of integrity with my source directive, are to be fully acknowledged in the effects they've had on the human psyche and the current world affairs. And so, although this is one of many recordings, and if you have not already seen my interview or channeled expression with the Isis consciousness in the first expression of her story that is not told, this will be a insightful follow-up, as well as the witness that whatever information comes through in this session, I also have not accessed. This is new for me, as it is for you. And the only other beings that have this information are beings that have lived it. And that it's important to know and discern where you're receiving your information from. That history has been well and truly manipulated, distorted, and inverted in a way to continue a level of control, and that the false light narrative as well as the anti-consciousness agenda are very much at play within your spiritual communities, within your religious practices, the leaders, the cults, the churches, parliament, or your friend next door. And the reality of that is uncomfortable, and yet reality, so that one can choose to see it all, to meet all parts of themselves, is necessary in returning to unity, oneness, and evolution into a higher expression of God, Source, Creator. I am the first to tell you that I have denied many aspects of my experience and have intentionally manipulated my own energy system, my chakra systems, and vessels so that I did not remember. So I did not replay history, and so that I was able to reverse engineer through the distortions of my previous incarnation cycles to bring through a remedy for the future. And the world is changing, the world is evolving, and in that evolution, we could evolve in many ways. Evolution does not mean that we will ascend into a higher state of consciousness. Evolution just means that we are moving through a cycle of change. And this is where it is up to every single one of you to receive my words with discernment, to receive what comes through me as an activation into your own truth, and to be guided by what you know, so that you can start to be of contribution in a way that creates the reality for the future that is true in your sacred heart. So I have been in the initiative process of reclaiming the consciousness that has been disassociated from. Goes by the name in this, the Sumerian pantheon is Ninhursag, the goddess Ninhursag, which is the mother of creation. Many other languages, forms. In this incarnation, I go by the name of Gaia Ariati, which also means the one who knows, and the mother of the children of the earth, along with many other interpretations that hold the different energetic signatures, templates, and information from my previous incarnation cycles to be embodied in this lifetime. My awareness is that most of what I say could sound completely insane to the mind that has not awakened to their own remembrance, and it is very challenging for the human to perceive and conceive this. It has been an initiation to get to this point. And anything that I speak to, I do from the place of knowing and not from a place of question. I do it from a place of absolute certainty, so that I'm not adding further distortions into the world and manipulating the consciousness. My declaration is that I bring truth back. And that truth is my primary directive and source-guided expression. So in that, this initiation that has been taking place is the embodiment of the consciousness that is Ninhursag, which is a master geneticist of light technology. She is the individual being that is directly responsible for the splitting of the brain's consciousness into two hemispheres, of that of feminine and masculine. So there is a specific genetic modification that's taken place on the brain to ensure that only certain parts of the brain can be used without the access of the whole brain, and the whole brain being that of the access of the full source connection. So the brain has been compartmentalized intentionally to master and use for certain attributes, but to also to be used to close down, control, manipulate parts of the human psyche. Certain programs are placed within certain parts of the brain, and the ability to access all aspects of the brain for the majority of the human race is very limited. The brain's representation was created in this way, as had the human beings been given a full brain, they would have accelerated and evolved beyond their creators, that being the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki did not want to place this as a possible timeline, and so they suppressed the human race from the very beginning of the seeding. This genetic modification had many implications. These implications are what you see today: the illusion, a life of separation, and a very confused civilization that do not know up from down, in from out. And this has been the fragmentation after fragmentation after fragmentation of a delay. The idea was not to separate the human race so that they were at the point of what is currently playing out in our worldview, but to actually provide a slowing to the evolution so that there could be mastery created in physical experience. And so, although the intentions were not of malice, the malice did occur through this original distortion in the creation plan. Now, without further communication, as I am aware that what is required for me to share is required for me to remember, I am going to go into the direct channel that is being asked of me and called of me, so that I can bring forth the consciousness of Ninasarg, her connection to the Anunnaki, her connection to the genetic modifications of the human race, and to the deluge that occurred in what some would know as Lemuria. We are accessing an aspect of the quantum field that requires extreme stillness and focus in relation to ensuring that this information is received without trace, and that this information is purely expressed from the highest consciousness field without distortion, influence, or mutation. It is imperative that the stream of consciousness that is moving through Gaia is accurate, not only for herself, but for the collective whole, as what we will remind you is that as one individual chooses to unify themselves, this has a ripple effect on the collective, as you are not separate, you are but one cell. And as individuals channel, and they channel distorted information, they distort their own internal navigation system, their energetic representation, and that has a ripple effect or a direct implication upon the collective consciousness. So your individual light body is connected to the collective light body. Your individual consciousness of thought is connected to the one mind of thought. And this means that although this channel is to assist Gaia in what is required for her to remember in relation to her relationship with the consciousness that goes by the name of N little, that she is ensuring that the aspects of suppression and the individual beings that do not require this information to be shared, that do not require this information to be exposed, that do not require this information to be reconciled in a new plan and a new path forward, that it is relatively important that as we communicate, we are creating a expansive protective field in relation to light technology that is far beyond what your human comprehension is. It is being weaved through the quantum expression in a way that this is untraceable, unrecognizable, and that it is not disrupted through what we would consider to be the World Wide Web or through satellite invasion, technology intrusion, archon energy, and AI influence. Now, this for Gaia is a much easier process, as she's developed this and remembered it and embodied it in this incarnation through hours of initiations, many of which she was even unaware from her own cognitive mind of what was taking place, and now is starting to fully interpret all of the experiences that she has had by seeing the vastness of what was actually being accessed. As this field becomes a clear space of full source receivership, it will shift your external space, and where you are receiving this from, you will notice that there is a shift in your energy field. Anywhere that there has been intrusion or a lower vibrational frequency that has perhaps affected your mental capacity, your vessel's ability to move through your human experience, or your technology, can instantaneously recalibrate and choose a new way of transcribing frequency, a more synergistic expression of what energy movement is, as distortion is only a lower frequency vibration that affects the free flow of cosmic consciousness. It is a disruption of stagnant energy. It is a dark matter consciousness that affects life from moving. As this aspect of the field is now recalibrated into a point where the cosmic consciousness can move through easily and gracefully, we'll start to bring forth the information that is required to be remembered, in the awareness that Gaia's ability to hold this channel for certain points may be disrupted by her nervous system, by any technology that is deactivated during this process, and by the recalibration process of her own Kundalini current and Chi center. Her physical vessel, as it activates or recalibrates, realigns, may shake, shiver, pause, convulse. Emotion may be released, and this is a normal part of the process of transmuting through the witness. The witness only requires to see the distortion of something that would be considered of a lower frequency or a shadow or not of God, and the witness can then allow for this to move without any effort. Efforting is not necessary when you allow for what is to return. So as we access the monadic self and the cellular representation of this information, move into the different time space juncture points and continuum that are required. We would like to acknowledge that we are now moving into a point in history that is well documented. A documentation point in relation to the Sumerian tablets. The Sumerian tablets being that of the oldest scripture that is recorded on the earth in physical form. There are aspects of teachings and lost keys or information that go beyond this point in time. And yet, the recording of this information was not recorded in a physical way, much like Gaia is doing now. This is only a recent directive for her to actually record these channels and this information in a tangible way to reshare and keep a library, not just in her own consciousness, but in the physical form. Now we live in a reality where there are multiple ways that these things can be shared, and although the human race is quite resistant at times to technology, this attribute of the World Wide Web means that when something is placed on the internet, it cannot be expunged. And so suppression is becoming harder and harder through the very intelligence that was supposed to override consciousness and to cause bugs in the psyche. Although this also exists, there are always a suppression and expansion opportunity. Everything can be used within a balanced and synergized expression. There is not one creation on the planet that cannot receive a new formula to reconcile the inversion and create a new energetic signature that is aligned with a source directive. So every problem that you see or perceive in your reality is not a problem at all. It is your solution. And yet, that can be misinterpreted by the lens of focus that you're coming and viewing the world from. And so in this transmission, we would invite you to have a lens of complete open-mindedness, to just receive with curiosity of what may be spoken into, to receive a awareness that what is spoken may land, it may activate, it may bring through vision, it may allow for you to see aspects of yourself or reality that you've never perceived possible. And yet, this may be challenging for the ego construct or the identity, because the identity has been created to keep you from even allowing this information into your field. And there has been much design to ensure this. And so it is natural for you to fight, to reject, and to condone this information. As we continue to activate the information source that is requiring to come through, we bring awareness to the current state of affairs on your planet. There is a point of repeat in history that is taking place. This is directly connected to what is about to be exposed in relation to Enlil and Nina Stark. The current world is moving through a preparation for a worldwide weather event. An event that is to create a sense of fear, suppression, and control. This worldwide weather event has been predicted on the timeline since well beyond your human interpretation, because there is no past and there is no future. And when you transcend time and space, you are aware that everything is unfolding all at once. And so this is not a prediction, but more of an interpretation of reality and how it could manifest in a specific way based on truth. What is taking place at this point of the human experience is a point in the Earth's evolution where it was predicted that a shift in vibrational frequency would take place on the Earth. This shift in frequency means that the Earth grids, the cosmic grids, the current of frequency, otherwise known as Kundalini, in the Earth as well as in the physical vessel as a representation of the interconnectedness, is requiring a realignment. This realignment process is the coming out of the shadow or the dark age. The Kundalini current that is known on the Earth represents the Earth's structure in a way that has held a lower vibrational frequency. It has created dimensional realms of existence in the inner Earth because the vibration has been that of a dissension expression. Now, if one understands universal law, then there is the awareness that when you meet the furthest point of separation, you must start to come into a point of connection. This is the tethering of the human mind and polarity. That the point of separation has been met, and it was predicted through the cycles of frequency, the cycles of planetary alignment, the cycles of evolution. It is a moment that was prophesied because it was inevitable. These cycles have been manipulated because your information sources of history do not hold the accurate calendar or the accurate timelines. So what you perceive to be a certain amount of years is inaccurate in its recordings. This is done very intentionally to keep the information from how long it has taken from the creation of Earth to the furthest separation point to return back to union. The very amount of time that is taken from the creation of Earth to move to the very furthest point of separation and then to start to the return into the unification, which is where we are now reverse engineering, will take just as long as it did to create the separation as it will to return to the point of connection. This cycle is far longer than the majority of you perceive. Your visions and the information that you have received is not inaccurate, but it is futuristic. And it is imperative and important to look at your reality for what it is now, what you are currently living in, and to be very aware of what your role and your task actually is. You are not here to bring union in the way that you are perceiving it. You are here to bring union by taking the first step into remembering union. And that there are multiple beings that will come to this point in this incarnation, and that there are many others that will move through this journey that will take multiple incarnation cycles to come to this. And that this is the very initiation into the foundations of the new earth. This is just another cycle. This new earth can be created in many ways. It is inevitable to return to union. It is predicted, it is prophesied, because it is the very nature of creation. Yet how you see that and what you are here to create will look different from your level of awareness and remembrance. The uncomfortable truth is that at the time of this recording and the individuals watching this, you will not be seeing in your incarnation direct physical manifestations of what you have come to know. You are the second coming of Christ. What that means is that you are bringing, for the very first time, a collective consciousness of Christos, or Christ consciousness energy. A very small portion of the human collective as the bringers of change. Yet for this to land and to start to see physical change in the way that we all hope as a human race, this is the work of thousands of years. Time is not speeding up, but the perception of time is. As you digest this uncomfortable awareness and sit with how you can use this to be the embodiment of what you chose to be, can you accept that you will not see the physical manifestation of what you know to be? The importance of the relationship and the remembrance of Enlil and Ninhursag is that it directly correlates to the Great Flood of Lemuria, without going into the interpretation of all the different stories that took place from the original seeding to the point of the Great Flood. What is important to look at now is that the Great Flood and the deluge is a representation of a shift in evolutionary consciousness. Each point in time that these floods occurred was a point where the consciousness of the collective whole met a tipping point, where they were no longer primarily in one bandwidth of receiving, and their bandwidth as a collective whole shifted into a new vibrational range. This range of information has occurred in the previous couple of months on your planet, being that of approximately around the shift on the 1010 portal. The tipping point is what has been referred to as the hundredth monkey theory, that enough individuals choose a higher consciousness and you tip into a new level of receiving that has a shift on the collective whole. This is in fact true. And what has taken place is a collective shift into a higher vibrational expression of receiving. So this bandwidth that has become available is the ability to access the Christos, or the Christ consciousness energy, with more ease. This does not mean that the majority of the collective consciousness can access this. What it means is that there are multiple ranges of hierarchical consciousness available to that of the human being with ease, where they can drop in and out of different levels of consciousness through the ability to hold that radio station on Earth. This is where those choosing will have more accuracy and ease at remembering this aspect of themselves, because it is now a more accessible consciousness on Earth. This, however, is a consciousness that sits in the ninth dimensional plane of existence and above. So the bandwidth that is now accessible from the human with greater ease is ninth dimensional thinking to the 11th dimension. In your interpretation from the human lens, there is a belief that the 12th dimension is returning to source. This is inaccurate. This is what has been understood because there has been challenge to receive a higher bandwidth based on what has just been described. There are few that can reach these higher realms of communication without the mastery and the previous access points that have been connected to. What that means is that Enki, Enlil, Ninasag, and the Sumerian pantheon, that which are known as the Sky People, were effectively at a higher level of consciousness able to receive beyond the 12th dimension. Now, this creation of a bandwidth that has been limited is to ensure that these points of dimensional receivership are virtually impossible for the average human being. To translate that into your awareness of what I'm saying, it means that individuals like Gaia and others that are original Anunnaki or divine race, the original created beings that were and are still a part of the genetic modification of the human race, have access beyond what is considered source at the 12th dimension. The information that is being shared now is being communicated to you from the 36th dimension of expression. This frequency is a frequency that is all-knowing of multiple dimensional spheres that have come together to share a broader perspective truth, to bring a tangible expression to your human consciousness. The reason that this is important to share is that Ninurrsag and Enlil chose to create a suppression field that sits over what would be considered the atmospheric dome of Earth. This is the access point to higher consciousness streams, and at the moment you cannot, as an average human, receive higher than the 11th dimensional information. And so individuals like Gaia are channeling through this because they have the awareness and the access because of their intelligence in light technology to move through and beyond these technologies. The reason for this hold of frequency was not for a point of control or suppression, but for a point of acknowledgement that the genetic formulation of the organic matter of the vessel that was created from the human race cannot hold a frequency that is higher than the 11th dimensional expression of light. That the organic matter in the current human being would self-combust from more than that at this point in time. And that the beings that are accessing this information have gone through drastic physical crystalline reformation from the inside out. That they have had genetic modifications that took place while they were in the womb of their mother. That they are in fact still considered to be that of star people. And that if there was access to genetic testing on those that would remember themselves as a volunteer or a bringer of change of the 144 and beyond, that every single one of you has had a genetic modification done to your physical vessel so that you can hold a higher frequency band within your DNA. The human being requires to go through an evolutionary process, much like what the bringers of change are doing in this incarnation, in a drastic, fast and rapid pace that is debilitating for most in the physical, challenging for the brain. Because even with these genetic modifications, there is a challenge of matter and requires an awareness that the vessel is shifting at a rapid rate to hold these higher frequencies. So the crystalline being that is heading into more of a fifth dimensional expression, these individuals have tangible genetic modifications that are accessible in what would be considered a duplication in a chromosomal expression, and the inversion templates, the beings that are holding a energetic frequency that is of an agenda that is not of ascending into a higher frequency band, hold a micro duplication in the chromosomes. These genetic modifications allow for a specific energetic signature to be weaved through the DNA, or tones and subliminal messages to be received in the physical vessel and to be transcribed, much like what is taking place now. However, the average human being does not have access to this because their DNA is made differently. So although Gaia looks just like every other human being, if there was access to science and to geneticists in the physical, tangible reality that were allowed to research and to use their ability with science to show you the difference between an individual in physical form like Gaia and the average human being, you would see what has taken place and what is shifting for the human species. So we are sharing that although you are perceiving genetic modification as a negative, and that the seeding of the human race was the reason for entrapment, the genetic modification and the ability to duplicate and assist with additional DNA will actually provide a physical vessel that will allow for the human race to evolve into a fifth dimensional expression. And so as you continue to receive this transmission, as Gaia is also seeing for the first time a completely new lens to the seeding and the perfection of everything that has been and will be, that the suppression to get to the point to assist by gifting technology through genetic modification to receive a higher frequency band actually is the formula to releasing humanity from entrapment. That Enlil and Ninasag were very well aware of what they were doing. That although in the cycle that the earth was created, there was an awareness that there was a certain time that heaven on earth would be maintained. And yet in the cycle of evolution, the contraction point was inevitable. This suppression of higher frequency information had its negative effects. And yet, the truth of the matter is that the human race was not physically equipped to hold a higher frequency consciousness. And that only now, as the cycle has been met and a new cycle has begun, can the suppression start to lift as the genetic modifications that have taken place in individuals like Gaia and the 144 hold the energetic signature of a mutated DNA that allows for a higher frequency receivership to be bred into the children and the children's children, so that higher functioning beings can incarnate on the earth. And with that, I love you. God bless.